Good Friday morning, guys. I'm Jerry Miller, and thank you kindly for joining us on Real Talk with Keith Smith. It's an absolute pleasure to connect with you guys through the I Love CVille Network on a show presented by Yes Realty Partners this morning. Since 1987, YRP, Yes Realty Partners, has proudly served buyers and sellers in this thing we call real estate. It's an ever-changing profession, and today's show will embody that ever-changing nature of real estate. Some contract law in the focus today. The new VR 600 contract. Keith has monikered this the good, the bad, and the ugly. And yes, you heard me use the word Keith today. He is in attendance after a fantastic hiatus of the month of May in the Caribbean with his wonderful wife Yonna. They're celebrating, or have celebrated, 40 years of nuptials and fantastic wedding experiences. They work together, they live together, they play together.
She put up with me for 40
and
years.
for 40 years, she's hung out with Keith. I mean, right that. I mean, goodness gracious, I feel like I should send Yonna a top shelf bottle of scotch for 40 years.
Or
Keith,
sympathy.
look at Keith Smith over there. Judah Wickhauer's behind the camera. We give him some props. Without Judah Wickhauer, this is not possible. I think on that note, we should go to the studio camera and welcome a sun-kissed Keith Smith to the show.
Thank you. And a shout out to Judah. 5 people on set is a hard thing for him to manage, so thank you for doing this, Judah. On it, I can go back to the Caribbean now that you guys kind of handle it. So today is like we talked about, just the good, bad, and the ugly, right? You know, there's a new sheriff in town. It's the new VR 600. There's some good parts, there's some bad parts, and there's some really ugly portions to it. My goal today is the 5 of us to sip a cup of coffee or a bottle of water and kind of talk it through. We're not going to give legal advice, right? But we're just going to talk through it from a practitioner's perspective and see how the folks watching and listening can move forward. And I know it's a great sign when Bill's pulling out about, I mean, how many trees did you kill for that, Bill?
Too many.
He's a legend. Bill Tucker's the legend.
He's a legend. So let's do this. Bill, why don't you introduce yourself to the few people who don't know you, and we'll work our way around the table and then dive in.
Thank you, Keith. Thanks, Jerry. I'm Bill Tucker. I am a real estate attorney by choice. I just happened to have nothing else to do, so I became a real estate attorney. I'm a partner with a local community law firm of Tucker, Griffin, Barnes.
Hi, good morning. My name is John Ralston. I am likewise a real estate attorney. I say by trick because I didn't know any better when I started, and I'm at Ralston Law Group here in town.
And I'm Taylor Odom. I'm a solo practitioner. I have an office here downtown. I've been in Charlottesville since 2013.
So collectively, how many years of real estate attorneyship do we have at the table? I know you're.
Let's just say over 50.
How long have you been in real estate, Bill? Out of curiosity.
Well, when I graduated law school in 71 and bought my first property in 71.
There you go.
And how old were you at that time?
71, no. Probably just out of college, regular, maybe 20, let's see, law school.
It's probably like 24, 25.
24, 25.
Yeah. Do you know what the new average age of a first-time home buyer is?
Probably 35.
Let's ask the panel.
I vote 35 because
We got 135.
John, what do you got? Average age according to the National Association of Realtors for the first-time home buyer.
I was going to say 33.
Okay.
I would say 35.
Okay. The answer is 40.
Oh, wow.
And that new number is about to be released, and the expectation is it's going to be even higher. Wouldn't you say, Keith?
I think you're going to see closer to 42 when it gets released out that way. So first-time home buyer is 40 years old. And you made me trigger that by when you bought your house when you were 24, 25. I bought my first home at 24, 25. I know Jerry
Same.
was about that same
Yeah.
age. Gentlemen?
Let's see, I was 31. Yeah, I bought my first home.
Yeah, but
Say
that was like 12 months ago.
27, 28.
Yeah.
There you go.
Now 40. Now with a 4. Unbelievable.
All right, so let's get into it. So gentlemen, what's the big change in this contract versus last contract? Do we want to kick off with the big one, the time is of the essence? question, or what do you guys think, huh?
Can I ask this question before you answer this one? What is the VR 600 contract? Should we start there first?
Okay, so.
For the average, for the layman?
Thank you. The VR contract is the Virginia Realtors Residential Purchase Contract. Good call, Jerry.
Yeah.
So, this is, as real estate agents, we go into our system, part of the Virginia Real Estate Associations. This is the template, for lack of a better term, that we use throughout. And it is certain jurisdictions or some MLSs, such as Northern Virginia, has their own contract. And I have some theories on this new contract and that. Maybe we'll get into it a little bit later. But this is if you're buying or selling a piece of property in our region, this is by and far the contract you're going to see and the contract you're going to have to work with. And there's been a lot of pushback on it because there is a term in the beginning of this contract that says time is of the essence on all terms after that. So I've got a bunch of questions about that, but I just wanted to kind of throw onto the table to the panel. I think I know how you feel about the terms. The term time is of the essence, but if somebody can just give a high level what that actual term means, and then we can take it from there.
Well, I'd probably start backwards, where before we had on or about, and then we had on or before, but essentially there's a little bit of wiggle room, for lack of better words, meaning that if you miss the settlement date, it wasn't an immediate default and death of the contract. So what we've done is gone the other direction of times of the essence, which is strictly you must perform by the date.
So but from a legal textbook perspective, Bill, what is the definition of time of the essence?
It means that is a holy date. That is the date, and with the new contract, it's all the dates are time is of the essence.
So that's my first question. So I'm reading this contract, the top down, it says all terms. So anything that's date related in this contract is now a time is of the essence.
It's a material term.
Exactly. If it says a date is filled in, that date is the date. If it says 5 days after so-and-so, it's 5 days, it's not 6. And the other thing the listeners ought to know is this VAR form, even though it's a statewide form, we're the main community in the state that uses this contract. The rest of the areas, Northern Virginia, Richmond, even Lynchburg, Roanoke, most of the state have their own locality-specific contracts, and all of those contracts have some version of time is of the essence in it. I know we're going to get to this later, but in my opinion, the reason this got enacted without much advice from any real estate lawyer in our community, it was done so that we would come in conformity with the rest of the state, because we were getting realtors from Northern Virginia for Richmond coming in here and not liking the way we do closings.
Gentlemen?
Oh, I agree with that. I think it was more so just to match the rest of the state. And I think even at that meeting with VAR and CABA, that's virtually what they said. They wanted to match.
Yeah, no, I've talked to some realtors where they were, the realtors from Northern Virginia were insistent upon using the Northern Virginia form contract. And then it was kind of like which version shall we use? And then now I think there's probably a little less nuance between the versions. At least that's the intent.
So Telly, you wrote a pretty good little talking points there on time is of the essence. So we're going to lean on you to kind of take the lead on that. So of that 2 pages you've got there, what's the big takeaway?
Yeah, so I guess if we kind of look back a little bit, when you look at contract law in Virginia, with real estate, typically there was a favor towards flexibility. From a practitioner's standpoint, there's a lot of negotiating and soft skills and trying to get the deal done. But with the now time is of the essence, there's a little bit more teeth to the contract and to the dates. So I look at it, every date is critical now, unless there's an amendment to that, disclosing as what is not critical and what is critical. The big thing about time is of the essence is that if a date is missed, then it can be viewed as a material breach of the contract, and the opposing party can claim that there is a default of contract. So that's a big deal. So I guess the key takeaway would be, you miss a date, that's bad, but it's really bad if the opposing party gives you notice that has been a material breach of the contract, which could be grounds for termination. Now, of course, a lot of that would probably come about in a sort of mediation or even a litigation. And since there's not a lot of litigation, particularly in our area, because this is a new form contract, it's a big unknown.
Well, I haven't been doing this as long as Bill, but I've been doing it for a while. And generally, real estate contracts are only as good as either side, right? The buyer and the seller, right? If they're willing and able and want to do the deal and move forward, we generally work through these issues. I think there's some pushback on this term, time is of the essence, and it from the community, from the real estate community is, for instance, one of my suggestions we talk a little bit about is the loan application timeline, right? Mm-hmm. That's never really been kind of followed, right? We kind of, it was part of the process, but right now, from contract ratification, they have 5 business days to make loan application, right? So what is loan application? Well, it actually defines it in there that you have to pay your appraisal fees. So how do we as agents manage that, right? Because what could happen is we're now working with a third party that we don't exactly know if the process has happened. I think the good part of this new contract from a practitioner's perspective is, at least from my side of the table, everybody's got to up their game a bunch, right? We're going to have to really track dates, and we're really going to have to make sure that these items are completed and documented through it. But Bill, you've been around the block more than a few times, and you and I have worked on some deals that we held together at the last minute. Where does this contract cause problems in those situations?
Well, as we real attorneys know, handling the closings, all the issues that have been percolating during the contract negotiations, inspections, walkthroughs, final walkthroughs, title issues, they all come to the head at the day of closing. So now this new contract says you don't have any waffle room to spend a little bit of flex time to solve a problem. I'll give you a great example of what I found out yesterday from a situation. Seller has to buy a house out of the area. Closing is scheduled in the contract for Wednesday, 2 days ago. The buyer was not able to attend the walkthrough. That's the final walkthrough to make sure all the items have been repaired and such. So the buyer had his realtor do the walkthrough with a camera. And they noticed in one of the rooms where a cabinet had been that held a TV, not apparently a large widescreen TV, but a regular TV. When they moved the cabinet off the wall, when they left the house, there was a mark on the floor, and on the wall board was a couple of dry bubbles from the paint bubbling, which would indicate maybe some water problem. But it was definitely dry. It was able to be inspected because the cabinet was not against the wall. It was off the wall a little bit because of all the connections for the TV. Well, the buyer basically said, "I'm not closing. I want to come down personally and look at that before I close." So I think today the buyer's showing up because in the meantime, the sellers who are trying to buy a house out of the area are incurring damages because their contract in this other area has time is of the essence on it. So quite frankly, if we had time is of the essence contracts for this one, the buyer could have been told, if you don't close on Wednesday, you're going to be incurring damages. If you read paragraph, I think it's 13 of the new contract default, it provides that if the If either party defaults, the non-defaulting party is liable for all kinds of damages, real estate commissions, and attorney's fees. You don't need to, I think, say it's a material breach. If you default, if time is of the essence and not close on that closing date, this particular buyer would have incurred all the costs that the seller is incurring out of the area.
So this is for everybody. So there's some confusion out there amongst real estate professionals that the time is of the essence clause in the beginning of all terms does or does not negate on or before, right? So we have on or about or on or before, and I think we've all had this discussion before prior to the time of the essence that kind of gives you a fudge factor of a couple of days one way or the other. So what I'm hearing from you, Bill, now is that if you put a date in there and you don't hit it for whatever reason, then this contract could just evaporate, correct? And then plus there would be damages.
Correct.
Associated with
Now, the good news is on the lender side, the language is still there for the lender. If you don't get that commitment by that certain date, we still have what I call the evergreen clause, that it keeps on going until you either get a commitment or you get terminated. There's a 3-day notice period that you can give notice that I'm tired of waiting, so either get your commitment or not. But other than that, that closing date, it's not on or about, not on or before. It is the closing date.
So back on the good part of this, guys, is there what do you see in here that is good from your side and from a practitioner's perspective and from a client's perspective?
Well, I mean, I kind of like how they further elaborated on I guess it's section 3 on just the types of financing. That I think is a good change. It's just there's a lot more options, but also a lot more to fill in. So, again, I mean, I don't want to say everything's bad about it, but just circling back to times of the essence, I think there is potential to ramp up the pressure a little bit on the settlement agent side. Because, I mean, even if you go back to, Section 11, indemnification, the parties agree to hold harmless the listing broker and the selling broker for any delay arising from regulatory or legal requirements. Well, legal requirement being the contract. So that's where I do sometimes feel a little more pressure of okay, well, the agents are indemnified, I'm not. So I think there will be an adjustment.
Well, it makes your guys' job that much harder, right? Because you're going to have to be in front of this way before. Do you see it the same way, Taylor?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I was going to say, I never thought I'd say the words good and title defect in the same sentence, but I do think the change into the title paragraph that if there's a title defect, I think there's a 10-day window now. But from my perspective, if there is a title defect, then now there's going to be a separate amendment to the contract that's going to need to be drawn up that will specify the terms of how that defect is going to be remedied, what specific dates and that sort of thing, because in the old contract, I think it was 60 days.
It was 60.
Yeah, and so there was a lot of kind of are we going to do this? Is this happening? What's going on? I think this is going to have the parties a little bit more aware of exactly what's going on with that title defect, how it's being remedied, and just a little bit more clarity to it.
But that 10 days is going to be starting much sooner than the closing date because it's going to start when the title report comes in. So it doesn't give a lot of time to solve a title problem.
Right, so that's why there's going to have to be an amendment, drawn up every time there's a known title defect. And the most common one is if there's a deed of trust that hasn't been released from a prior lender. Those are quite common, but a lot of times those releases, you have to track down the former lender, the note holder, and that can take 30, 45 days to get those FedExed and recorded. So
my concern is that what Keith pointed out is that we're all going to have to up our game because as we all know, there's so many things that can delay the closing right at the last minute. There's a walkthrough problem. The HVAC is not working. We can't get a serviceman out. Well, we're definitely going to have some kind of escrow arrangement now. Now you got to get the lender involved potentially with that.
And then we're doing amendments, which we would do anyway, right? We would have to amend the closing date.
Well, now we would delay the closing.
Yeah, correct.
to get the serviceman out tomorrow and close the next
Assuming you
day.
can find somebody to go out there.
Yeah, but you know, things like as simple as the UPS loses the deed for 2 days. The weather delays the seller moving out. It's just, I mean, I guess if there's a good news, the way I've sort of rationalized it is that the rest of the state has figured out how to work with time is of the essence.
Yeah.
We've figured out how to do on or before. Now we've from on or about, we've gone to on or before. We'll figure out how to do time is of the essence. It'll just be a learning curve.
I think this changes how contracts are negotiated on the front end substantially before you guys even see it, right? Because there's so many more, you know, other than we're negotiating price and closing dates and some other terms and conditions within the contract. We are now negotiating, like I get wrapped around this loan application process, right? To me, this is a biggie, right? So before I now bring a buyer into it, I'm not going to need a pre-approval letter. I'm going to make sure that this buyer has actually made a loan application. Well, they can't make a loan application because they don't have a contract, right, on it. And, you know, sometimes you have conversations, well, I'm not really sure which lender I want to use on it. But now we've got this ticking 5-day business clock that once it's ratified, they've got to make application, they've got to pay for the appraisal, right? They've got to make the application fee on it. And so within 5 business days, they've got to commit to a lender. And sometimes, at least in the years I've been doing it, that kind of that fluctuates back and forth before they go ahead and do it. Any quick thoughts on that?
I mean, anything on point, it just needs to be front-loaded with respect to the planning and I'll say this, time is of the essence. I mean, I've worked with it in the commercial sense, and it gets done. The deals get done.
Sure.
So I don't have.
But those are different dynamics, right? This is very different. You know, when you're working with homeowners, this is generally the largest purchase on it.
Do you see maybe that a homeowner is going to maybe make multiple applications?
If they're willing to pay for multiple
Yeah.
appraisals.
Well,
right?
they can file the appraisal and then, you know, terminate it.
Well, it's very clear in the contract, they have to,
They have to
within
pay-
5
yeah.
days, they have to pay for the appraisal. I'm doing some quick market math here, just because I think the tempo of the market is really going to dictate how this contract is reacted and going forward. So, but before I do that, anything you want to jump in on that, Taylor, on what you're seeing as far as the negotiation structures go?
You know, I'm not really seeing much on the negotiation side. You know, this contract, the last it was revised was on the 26th of May, so it's pretty new. So I'm starting to see a couple of contracts come in, but I'm not really aware of the nitty-gritty of the negotiations behind the scene.
Yeah, well, people just haven't worked themselves through it yet, right? You know, look, and to Jerry's point, and he kicked the show off, you know, it seems like we've been doing this for over 7 years now, and every quarter there's something different in the market, right? So I think we'll work through it on it. I just think that the average real estate agent, the average buyer and seller need to understand these timelines matter. So I just did some quick high level, because the first Friday of next month, we'll do a much deeper dive into the market. But before I answer this, are you guys seeing tempos picking up in your offices? You've got sales in the last...
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this spring has been very busy.
It's picked up. It's slowed up a little bit in the last week or so.
But what do you think that is, Bill?
Probably the inventory. Buyers have found what they were looking for. If they're, you know, waiting for interest rates, they better go quick.
Well, I think the interest rates are having the biggest impact on it. Right now, year to date, the car footprint, so from January 1 to today, there was 835 units sold. This is total attached, detached, new construction. Same period last year, there was 764. So we're up roughly 8.6% in volume. Very interesting. The average price is up about 5%. We jumped from, we're currently, I apologize, I got the numbers reversed. It went down 5%. We're at 669 right now, average. Last year we were at 699, so we're up roughly 8.5% and we're down roughly 5%. That's on average. I got it.
So what's inventory, units sold are up or down? Explain that.
Units sold are up by 8.5%.
Okay, and then average price point?
It's down about 5%.
Okay.
Down 5.
Down 5%, yeah. Now, you've got to take a deeper dive.
That's the
into
entire
that.
car footprint.
That's the car footprint, that's attached, detached, that's just a quick throw up. But, I mean, you guys are looking at that 8.5% increase because you guys are seeing a larger, and I think when you're starting to see the prices get a little bit tighter, right, you're going to start seeing more competition and more negotiating going in, and where I think this contract's going to matter and the skill level is going to matter because, you know, here's a scenario, right? I'll just throw this out on the table. We've got let's say, you know, right now the 1 million to 1.5 million is a very hot market right now, right? You usually got multiple offers, yada, yada, yada. We come in, we put a contract in, we negotiate it, and we miss the 5 days. And Jerry puts another offer in, or Keith puts another offer in, or all of a sudden now the seller's got another backup offer in it. You're going to kick me out. You're going to say, well, you didn't meet your criteria. You're out, and I'm going to go sell it. Am I being a bit dramatic about that, or do you see this as a potential?
I mean, I think if you're, you know, at the end of the day, sellers are probably going to look to make as much money as they can on their investment. And just like a drop in interest rates, I mean, that's a similar thing. I mean, when interest rates were dropping and people were taking out very large loans, I mean, it was not at all uncommon to see somebody try and get out of a contract because they have a contract in the background that's, you know, 20% more.
Which was much harder in the old contract, right?
Right.
This one, you know, people are going to start looking for what did you miss, right? Mm-hmm. And it's layered. So many other items are layered within that contract. It makes it easier. Back to my original statement, you know, it's only good as Keith and Jerry, right? Mm-hmm. It's only good as the buyer and the seller, right? You know, if they want the deal and they're willing to work through it, they'll work through the thing. But I think once you start seeing interest rates getting back to where they were at the end of last year, the beginning of this year, before this little hiccup we've got going on, I think you're going to see the tempo get even stronger on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from my perspective, from a practicality speaking, you're probably going to want to have a critical dates list. You know, anytime you get a new contract drafted, where you look through it, write it down, have a critical dates list, and then mark those dates on your calendar, just to make sure you're not missing those. And from the time is of the essence, the way that courts look at that is behavior is very important. How do the parties treat the time is of the essence? There could be an argument to say, well, if we let one of those dates slide, nobody says anything, then there's this acquiescence that time is of the essence isn't really that important to the parties. So if you then try and, you know, after the fact, then go back and say, oh, well, you didn't meet this date. Well, you know, if you're a judge seeing this through litigation, you might think, well, you guys didn't care about it before, so you've acquiesced to times of the essence not being a material term of the contract. So that's always a possibility too. So if you're wanting to protect your rights, you know, obviously hold those dates hard.
So I can't say how other folks are doing it, but internally, we've actually, unbeknownst to this new contract coming out, because we knew a new contract was coming out. I don't think everybody in the industry really knew what the specific details were going to be for it. I know you guys didn't know because you guys kind of found out about this at a meeting. But, you know, what we do now is under every contract that comes in, there's a system we've set up that everybody that's involved in the transaction, from the attorneys, the lawyers, the buyers, the sellers, the agents, all get a constant timeline update, right? They get an initial email with all the things. And, you know, 2 weeks before a deadline, 5 days before a deadline, 2 days for a deadline, everybody in the team gets an email. To your point, if something goes sideways, I want to be able to say, we've reached out to everybody, we've notified everybody. Because from a brokerage perspective, this puts us in a little bit of a liability seat here, right? Because we're the ones, we're not party to the contract, but we help manage the contract and help manage the transaction from point A to point B. Do you guys see it the same way?
Absolutely. I think we've all got a ton of additional liability. And for example, my firm's looking at some software that'll do something similar to what you just mentioned, so that we can say, well, we kept you informed. You know, when I don't want to digress, but when you were talking about lenders and such, I was just looking back at the language, and I noticed under default, you know, failing to make a timely application, it's paragraph, it's under, it's paragraph, so A,
4.
Roman numeral little 6. But anyway, failing to file it timely is a default. But then it's got above it, and this is interesting, I'm curious what we all think, that it does say that these grounds constitute a default by buyer, which buyer may cure only by providing evidence reasonably satisfactory to seller within 3 days of written notice. So are we really saying that 5 days now can have another 3 days if the seller says, I'm pulling the plug because you didn't apply in time?
That's why you guys are here.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I
I don't know how to interpret that. to be
And
honest.
then if you go to default on paragraph 13, assuming there is a default, that party who didn't file timely and didn't file, assuming they get the extra 3 days, they're liable for a real estate commission and all kinds of other damages.
You're going to see a lot of that. If these things fall apart, you're going to see brokerages suing other brokerages. And that's what, you know, the software you're talking about, we implemented before this got released on our end of it. But you're 100% right. This is what happens. Everybody gets automatic texts
When
now.
we were at that meeting with Carr, one of the things that I pointed out, and the VAR people didn't like that, was that what this contract's going to do is create a lot more legal work for us lawyers, fixing all these problems, and it just means that the costs are going to go up for everybody.
So let's talk about the 10-ton elephant in the room. The local bar association created its own addendum to the residential purchase of contract. Since I didn't write it, you guys want to talk about what it is and what it does, and you know, there was a message from Virginia Realtors that, yeah, you can use it. I interpreted between the lines, you know, it wasn't approved by us, yeah, you can use it, but don't look at us to cover you if you do use it.
Yeah, well, I think every market that has their own form contract, there are common addendums that are circulated in that market, and I think this is going to be the one in our market. And shout out to Chip Royer at Royer Carey Manis, who, you know, really drove this home. He did a great job in coming up with this. And then, you know, Jim Cox is kind of our president of the local real estate bar association, and he and Chip worked together on getting this done. And I really like it. I mean, my biggest issue with it when I first saw it was, you know, obviously it's like, how does this affect me? And from the settlement standpoint, what's very common now, especially after the pandemic, are people who are signing documents out of town, particularly a buyer who's signing, you know, he's signing out of town, he's signing his loan package out of town with a, you know, mobile notary or somebody on the settlement date as he's supposed to. But then the settlement date is the date by which settlement should occur, but settlement can't occur until all documents and funds are in the hands of the settlement agent. So if he FedExes those documents back, those documents are going to arrive to the settlement agent the day afterwards, which technically
Is a default.
is a default. You can
default.
you can make that argument, and I think this amendment, this addendum, handles that by saying, you know, delays in couriers, overnight services, that sort of thing, can't be a reason for a default.
So talk about the good parts of this, right? The good, bad, and the ugly of the addendum, and you know, hopefully we have a bunch of real estate agents watching. Is this something they should use? Should they talk to their broker about it? Let's talk a little bit about this addendum, and does this addendum fix or help clarify, right? Because none of us like gray in a contract, right? Does this help clarify some of the gray? We weren't in the room, so you guys were. So what do you think about this contract, this addendum to the contract? Because I know it's being used quite a bit, actually.
Well, I was going to say to one point that was brought up in the meeting is that they wanted to get rid of some of the legalese in the contract or the prior version, which, okay, I've seen that in other fields as well, but sometimes that legalese served a purpose. And-
Legalese in a legal contract.
Yes, so I mean, that was the thing. It's
Again,
like,
you're attorney, so.
on one hand, it was like the contract's the contract, the respective times of the essence, but then in other sections, it was made to be more conversational, which, okay. But I think what the addendum is trying to address is just smooth over some of those instances where maybe it was a little overly edited or thinned out. I mean, like with, if anyone has it in front of them, Section 3, the balance, Chip Royer noted that there's certain instances where the deposit is stranded. It just accidentally got cut out. Inspections 4E, I've already seen a couple contracts where the provision about the home inspection or the final walkthrough, excuse me, was left blank. And I had to call the realtor back and said, by the way, don't leave that blank, because maybe it doesn't happen in this contract, but eventually it could bite if you leave that blank. And
Well-
I know, sorry.
Go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to say that the way the addendum got created was a group of us got together and realized that when we were at that meeting, we thought we were going to have 2 months to kind of work through
Yes.
everything, and we were surprised that not only did we not have 2 months, but we didn't even have a day because it was effective the day of the meeting. But that's okay. So a group of us got together, and this is the result of probably 3 or 4 different drafts that were circulated around the group. And it does attempt to, at least some of the obvious points that we were concerned about, it does attempt to modify those to basically create hopefully less conflict on some of the points that we thought were obvious that needed to be corrected. We've also, as a real estate bar, we're pretty active, and we've put the word out that let's take the month of May and see what kind of issues may come up. Unfortunately, we won't see a lot of closings happen with this contract.
Not in May.
But we just wanted to kind of get the word out, everybody think and see what kind of issues you've come up with. And when we have our June meeting, which I think is June 8th or something.
The bar.
The bar,
Yeah.
a real estate bar, we intend to kind of review what kind of problems we've already seen with this and maybe make more suggestions.
This, I reached out to lenders and say, okay, from your perspective, what do you see as troubling points? And they all kind of came back and said, look, at the end of the day, everybody's going to have to up their professionalism. Everybody's going to have to up their timelines. It's just a point, this, I've been doing this for going on 40 years. And I've done a ton of commercial projects, and you expect to see time is of the essence in that. When I word the words time of the essence, a chill went up my back, right? It's like a hand grenade with a pin pull. You never know when it's going to blow, But there's a provision in here that not a lot of us agents focus on, and the deposit, the buyer has to do a proof of funds. Now, it's within 7 days. And it's not something we generally track. Now we're going to start tracking that because, our role is to protect our clients, either a buyer or a seller, same as your guys. But, if it turns out that after contract ratification, there isn't proof of funds of the deposit for the contract, that's a default. That's page 2, number 5 of third-party financing. I can't read the top number. If you read the balance, basically what that's saying is that, so if you're doing a 80-20 loan, that 20% proof of funds has to be delivered in writing to the other side.
Yeah.
And if it's not, then that's technically,
Page 2.
it triggers the time that you underlined that. Look at that. The time is of the essence thing. And I know that this contract stuff can be a little dry in this conversation, but, what I am trying to do here is I know that the tempo is there. The numbers may not be there as far as value goes compared to last year, but we're up, and I expect this tempo to increase. And
Well, the
I-
value depends on the jurisdiction. That's for the entire car
100%,
footprint.
100%.
I bet if you looked at the Almore numbers,
If
they
I
would be
looked at Almore-
incrementally up.
I would.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Comments are coming in. This is from a lender, Jay Dominic. He's a pros as well. All these guys are. This is the comment from Jay Dominic. I think he's been in the business 30, 40 years. A point about the 5 business days to application. If the buyer comes to me on day 5 and makes an application, I cannot collect any appraisal fees until they've signed their application disclosures, specifically a form called intent to proceed. So if they're applying day 5, they probably will not receive their disclosures, their e-signs, and then pay before the 5th day is gone. So if buyers wait until they've signed their 5th day to apply, they will likely end up in default. And that's important to emphasize, he says, to everybody that's watching. You got 6 different real estate firms watching. You got a boatload of insurance brokers watching, a boatload of loan officers watching, some home inspectors watching the program, and a lot of elected officials here. Anyone want to talk a response to Dominic, Jay Dominic there?
But doesn't again, the default language in that section about if you don't timely make your application, the seller has to ask for evidence that they, give you the 3 days written notice. So the seller's actually got to give notice that you didn't apply in time.
Correct. Well, this puts the onus on the agent, right?
Yeah.
It puts the onus. That's where I've been hanging my hat on this one thing that Jay's been talking about, this loan application, because a lot of times, we're in multiple offer situations. We're, whatever it might be, we don't have everything done. Which is the comment I was trying to talk about. The negotiations have to happen on the front end. Now, does your addendum address this one specific issue on that? Or do we need to figure out a way to add into that? Because what it does is it ties the buyer's hands to this one lender, right? And we're going to have all this done, finished. To Jay's point, he can't do a full application until he has a contract. And 5 business days is not necessarily 5 calendar days, so you have a little bit of wiggle room in there to go ahead and do it. But these are hand grenades with pins pulled to go ahead and that could just blow a deal up.
This seems to give, just talking out loud here, and then we'll get to more comments here. This seems to give a lot more negotiating leverage, exit leverage to the seller. The seller here, should a multiple offer scenario arise, or should a better opportunity arise in the bottom of the 9th inning, has more exit upside.
Yeah.
And maybe the agents that are watching this program don't want to hear that, because that could just complicate. Maybe you guys don't want to hear that, but that's how I see it, as just a guy that,
100% right.
tries to win.
100%, and then it becomes an ethics question.
But is it an ethics question?
Well, depends, right? It's a tough. That's just a hard question to answer. We've got to operate with the 4 corners of the contract, but and you're supposed to enter into a contract in good faith, right? That's how you're supposed to do this, right? And all of a sudden you get another offer and you start looking for ways out of the deal. Am I really operating in good faith, right? And that's maybe a topic for a different day and a different for Jerry and I to battle out, but. I see it as a little bit of unethical and definitely not operating in good faith. That said, our role is to protect our client, and our role is to get the best possible for our client. If we're representing the seller, then, they get a better deal. We're going to start looking at a contract and figure out how to get out of it. And it just made it that much easier to do.
Right.
And it made it that much easier to do that I think when the market really starts rocking and rolling, you're going to see a lot of it.
Well, here's an interesting question. This is from someone not in the industry. This gentleman's name is Caleb. He says, Mr. Tucker, at the beginning of the show, mentioned that localities across Virginia have different contracts. Why is there not just one uniform one to practice real estate in Virginia?
Great question.
And that seems like a pretty good question.
Well, it would make sense, but of course, because we're dealing with different communities and different personalities and different practices, it's just not going to happen. It hasn't been that way for years, having the same contract form. It would be great, and I'm happy that we've got now a form that hopefully is going to be not changed a whole lot in the future, so this will give us some time to learn it and figure out how the kinks and how to make things work with this contract. Not to change the subject, but when we're talking about what you just talked about, Keith, with the lender and the application, at the back end, according to the contract, there's a loan commitment that's needed, but from the lender's side, they need a clear to close. They need to clear to close so they can send out their CD in time to make the closing happen.
So talk about that, because there's a lot of misunderstanding between clear to close and loan commitment. It's two very different things. Clear to close is exactly what it says.
Yeah,
we're ready to close. We've got all the things met.
And typically, they don't send they send the CD out when they've got the clear to close. So what's happening now is we're working with the lender towards the end of the closing, comparing numbers, getting
So what
CDs to balance.
about a loan that has a 3-day rescission period in it? And all of a sudden, we're changing the CD.
Well, that's not going to be that's not a purchase. That's not going to be under this contract.
Yeah, the only time that would happen is if, I think the interest rate changes, the loan amount changes, or prepayment penalty is added for some reason, then it would restart the 3-day, time frame.
But if that happens, right, it happens.
Yep.
We now have a conflict
Yeah.
in the contract that everybody's got to scramble to do an amendment on. Jerry, to your point, you're spot on. Albemarle County, we're up. I just did the numbers. We're up 25 units year over year, and we're flat on sales price. So we're at 922 is the average from 2025 to that. So to your point, Albemarle County staying pretty consistent on value. I have to take a deeper dive. I think that number's probably a little greater, 26 over 25.
Katie Mullins watching the program. She says one of the big questions, and she's a realtor. She says one of the big questions for the folks that are interviewing agents, be sure that you ask them specifically, are you familiar with purchase agreement contracts in the market and any updates to those contracts before you get on board with a real estate agent? It's going to be working on your behalf.
Yeah, so thank you. The level of professionalism within my specific industry is going to have to raise, right? You're going to have to really take the time to educate yourself and understand the contract, and more importantly, be able to communicate it in the way folks understand it on it. When by the time it gets to you guys, it's signed and done, and then you guys are trying to work through what we've got there on our end, and that's what I was trying to explain a little earlier. The items that we now need to focus on to negotiating the contract just grew, right? And that's okay. That's a good thing, and I think that's the good part of the contract, because Bill, I've been doing this long enough. The theory always used to be get it on the contract and work it, get it on paper and work it. You cannot do that with this contract now.
Right, and we've been talking today about all the things that could go wrong and how you can get out of the contract, but fortunately, most of the time, we have a buyer who wants to buy,
There you go.
a seller who wants to sell, a lender who wants to make a loan, and a realtor would like to make a commission, and we're going to make it work. It's only when we have that seller who's got a second contract offer and wants to get out of the first one that we're going to see this
Or I
contract.
don't want to do this anymore.
So I think that's how we're going to get around this. We're just going to work our way through it. And
Well, we said this earlier,
Yeah.
right? I mean, a real estate contract is only good as the two parties that sign it, right? And back to my good faith comment, right? If everybody operates in good faith, right, mistakes happen and issues need to be worked through, everybody moves forward in good faith. It comes to the point where somebody doesn't want to do that, and now it's easy to get out. Now, I just got to pick up the phone and call John up and go, I need verification. Loan application was made within 5 business days. It was paid and all that stuff. And if you can't verify that in writing, then I'm going to exercise the time is of the essence clause. And we're going to say, thank you very much. Your contract is now terminated.
But after the 3-day notice.
Yeah, you have to,
3-day notice.
yeah, 3-day cure period, basically, yeah.
Which then, if they want the house,
Yeah.
they take 3 days to go ahead and do it. So I just think everybody kind of saw the time as essence like I did and went, but this is all going to be about the level of professionalism in our industry to help people get through it. And this is why I wanted to do this today, is to have this conversation. Any questions?
This question's come in. I understand the opportunity or the upside from the seller side if they want to get out. Is there any wiggle room on the buyer side should they want to get out by intentionally missing times and dates? I think on that side, you guys are the pros. It's much more punitive if you do that on the buyer side. Maybe you mentioned that, I believe, but maybe we should offer more clarity on the punitive nature.
Yeah, I mean, obviously what's hanging over the buyer's head is whatever their earnest money deposit was.
Right.
And, the higher that amount is, would a buyer be okay losing, $3,000 maybe, but if it's, 25 or 50 on a, very large property, then I think there's a little bit more thought that the buyer would have to make on that decision.
But Taylor, the contract doesn't have the deposit as liquidated damages. So if that buyer defaults, he potentially owes a real estate commission,
Right.
owes
That's
legal
the big one.
fees.
Yeah.
So the buyer doesn't have a lot of ways to get out of this by purposely defaulting. They can just hope.
Well, then they're
that-
in default, right?
Yeah.
And therefore
Well,
it triggers all.
Well, but they don't to do something to create that. They're more likely going to be waiting for the deed to get lost in the mail, or the wire from the
Something
lender
to do with the
not-
inspection.
or the wire from the lender
Yeah.
gets delayed a day and it's not there till the next day, and you claim settlement didn't occur on the closing date. I'm
Or how about a
terminating.
soggy wall behind the TV cabinet?
Yeah, exactly.
So to the agent who chimed in with that question, it's really the genesis of today's conversation, that as the first line of defense, for lack of a better term, it's how we have to explain the contract to the buyer, right? And we need to do this in a way that the buyer understands it or the seller understands it, and these are the potential loopholes, or these are the potential pitfalls in it. Like I said earlier, I've been doing this since '87, and it's always been the theory: negotiate it, get it under contract, and work through the problems as you go through it. This makes it that much harder to do business in that fashion.
This from a realtor. What if the funds are being provided by a HELOC from another property? Then the 3-day rescission would have an effect. Anyone want to touch that one?
Well, yeah, I mean, the funds need to be there at settlement or before settlement, so it doesn't matter what the source of the funds is. If they're late, you're a default.
And if we write a good contract and put an addendum in the contract that says this purchase is contingent upon the refinancing of another piece of property, yada, 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 then you have yourself protected from it. The problem is you probably won't get that across the finish line on the buyer end of it. And, the question becomes, do we need to disclose that the deposit is coming from a HELOC, right? But, again, in situations where multiple offers are then in negotiations, that's probably going to hurt you, not help you.
This question comes in. Can the panel speak to how many deals are cash deals that they're writing or are part of?
I've done quite a few cash this year. Lots of cash in our area, a lot of cash transactions in our area.
The ballpark back of the napkin for the car footprint is 1 in 3 deals roughly are cash transactions. Is that number upticking? Just back of the napkin numbers are downticking. I would imagine with, interest rates, good God, with the geopolitical tension, and we're not going to go down that road. Rates are up. And now we're talking potentially no Fed cuts at the end of the year, later this year, and rates can go even higher. I would think cash would be even prioritized more.
Before you said the 1/3, I would have guessed 1/3, but on a higher end contract, $1 million and above, I bet it's 2/3 are cash,
Yeah.
if not more.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to jot that down. I haven't looked at the numbers yet, but it's been holding across the board about 1/3.
Yeah.
Right? To your point, if you took a look at Albemarle County, $1 million up, you'll see probably a bigger number. But what you won't see is, okay, I'm doing a 1.25 and I'm bringing $600,000 cash and I'm only getting a $600,000 loan. That's not considered a cash transaction, right? But for all intents and purposes, it's a cash transaction, right? You know, that when you're bringing 50% cash to the table, it acts a lot like a cash transaction.
Comments continue to come in. Yonna is thanking the panel for being here, part of the show, and the expertise. Your buddy, is it Javon? Is watching in the Caribbean.
So I need to give a shout out to him. Javon is
Javon, sorry.
great guy, and a young man, and he helps us with what we do down there in St. Martin. And I was talking to him the other day, and he goes, "I watch your show, but I have no clue what the hell you're talking about." Right? So they're on a French island over there, but he is an awesome young man. He runs his own little water sports setup, and it's just a young 20-something, hard-working kid that we think the world of. He goes, "I watch you all the time," and he's from Jamaica. And he goes, "Mom, I have no idea what the hell you're saying."
Our marker here for the panel, what is the panel's prediction or crystal ball for how the rest of the year is going to play out? The rest of 2026 is going to play out. Anyone want to make some bold predictions?
Everybody just went,
Yeah, it's really hard to tell. I mean, you know, when you look at the inventory, I'm not really aware of the inventory. I remember there were some numbers thrown around in the car meeting that we had. There was about 150-day supply of inventory, and that fluctuates. So
it depends on where the jurisdiction is, what you're doing now. So I do a 7-day running sale. That's what you're looking at here right now. So right now we have 100 new homes that came on the market and 101 went pending. And I track this every 7 days on it. And we've been between the 100 to 150 new coming on and roughly the same going off. So back to the tempo question, right? You know, a lot is coming on, but the same amount is coming off. We're not actually picking up inventory, right? So picking up inventory would be we'd have more coming on the market, less going pending on it. So whatever's coming on is going off. Now you have to take a deeper dive. Some of these are sitting in the market for a little bit longer, but a snapshot of a 7-day window, the car footprint, we're basically running a 1-to-1 schedule. What comes on kind of goes off, not the same property.
My experience from doing this for several years is it really doesn't matter. We have a good community, and we will continue to see people moving in and buying, and people relocating, or people moving up or moving down. And I have never, even when we had the crash in 2007, things were still active.
Oh, you were busy doing other stuff, though.
Well, that's true.
You were doing short sales.
A little of
You were
that
busy.
and foreclosures.
And foreclosures, right, which is an interesting thing. I'm going to talk about that next thing. Foreclosures starting to pick back up. On the commercial side, for sure, you're starting to see them pick up a little bit on the residential side, but nothing dramatic, right? It's going from 0 to a little bit above 0, but you're starting to see a movement a little bit on the foreclosure side. Look, it's interesting. Yonna and I were talking about this when we were down with our family. The spring market sprung around January. I think the summer market is going to spring around June this year. I think you're going to start seeing, particularly because of interest rates, lack of inventory, I think everybody's taking the gas prices. I think everybody's going to take a breath somewhere around June, see what happens. But you know, when you're number 3 in the nation for lifestyle market, people are coming, and they're coming cash. and they're coming at a very substantial price point. I mean, Bill, you've been doing this for a while. I mean, would you ever expect $1 million to $1.5 million to be the most competitive market right now?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. And I'm amazed at the cash, the contracts that come across for cash. And it's good for the community and good for the market. So let's keep it up.
There you go.
Yeah, and I was going to say also, I've heard that the highest growing demographic in the Charlottesville Albemarle are the 55, 60 and plus.
The boomers.
Yeah, so coming
Damn
in with a lot of cash to
Well, we're way past our time, but I've been saying this, the real conflict is generational. It's between my generation and Z and millennials, right? We've got the money, right? We've got the cash, and we're just buying stuff up, and the buyer profile is the same. What the millennial wants and what the boomer wants is exactly the same. Single level, buy a brewery, buy a coffee shop, whatever, that kind of thing, and we're competing for the same product. But we're gonna dig into that a little bit next month. Any quick questions, Joe?
No, we covered them.
Gentlemen, I really appreciate this. I know this is in the middle of your busy season. I know Bill's ready to go out and go do some closings here. He's packing up already, doesn't even want to say goodbye, he's just leaving, right?
I like that.
But any last words real quick before we wrap up? And just thanks again for doing this. We'll start with you.
Yeah, I'll just say thanks for the opportunity. I'm happy to talk about it. And as to the the addendum to the local VAR contract, I view that it's going to be changed. It's a working document. So ideally, as our market plays out, we'll have some great comments and great additions to the addendum.
So on that standpoint, if somebody wants a copy of that, how do we do? They reach out to you guys to get a copy of it, or how do we get addendums into real estate agents' hands?
Yeah, feel free to email. I know all of our local bar has them circulating, so we can forward them over on the email chains.
John,
Well, thanks for having me back again.
always welcome.
And yeah, I think it will be an adjustment. It's just smoothing out some of the issues that are going to arise, or just asking questions or being involved in a way that we weren't prior. But I think this community will adjust.
It'll go sideways when somebody doesn't make the money they think they're going to make. That's when it'll go sideways.
And again, thank you for doing this. And yes, all of us, most of the real estate attorneys in this community have access to the addendum, and we'll be glad to share it. We hope the different agencies will look at it and consider it. And again, most of us real estate attorneys this is just sort of a practical advice. If you've got questions, realtors, and you're thinking about getting a contract signed and you need help, don't hesitate to call one of us, because I always take the position I'd much rather get involved while the contract's being negotiated and clear up problems and have to deal with them after it's ratified.
Well, you have no flexibility now, unless you have this addendum. Once it's signed, it's signed. And there's very few flexibility to it.
Keith, fantastic panel. We appreciate you. Viewers and listeners that are asking, the show is archived in totality wherever you get your social media or podcasting content. Judah Wickower is behind the camera and made sure we stayed on track and put everything together. Thank you to Judah. And we thank the panel. The I Love CVille show, guys, is up at 12:30. And thank you kindly for watching Real Talk with Keith Smith.
And I want to thank the folks watching. This was a really needed conversation, so thank you everybody for chiming in.
Enjoy the morning, and we'll see you guys in about an hour and change. So long.
Thanks, guys.
Done.